our reaction video today, we are going to be interacting with Sam Harris, who has been interacting with Jordan Peterson. So this should be fun.
But speaking of apes with egos, some of the most compelling apes, two compelling apes I can think of is yourself and Jordan Peterson.
Thank you very much for that introduction.
And you've had fun conversation about religion that I watched most of, I believe. I'm not sure there was any...
we didn't solve anything.
If anything was ever solved. So is there something like a charitable summary you can give to the ideas of that you agree on and disagree with Jordan? Is there something maybe after that conversation that you've landed, or maybe as you both agreed on, is there some wisdom in the rubble, even imperfect, flawed ideas? Is there something that you can kind of pull out from those conversations, or is it a to be continued?
I mean, I think where we disagree. So he thinks that many of our traditional religious beliefs and frameworks are holding such a repository of human wisdom that we pull at that fabric at our peril, right? Like if you start just unraveling Christianity or any other traditional set of norms and beliefs, you may think you're just pulling out the unscientific bits, but you could be pulling a lot more to which everything you care about is attached.
So the thing to note here is that I think that what Peterson is saying, or to take Harris's summary of what Peterson is saying, I think that as a sociological observation, that's quite true. Our religious understanding and our moral and ethical understanding and our civilizational understanding and our cultural understanding of life, they're all woven together, and you can't just extricate one thing. So sociologically, I think Peterson is correct. If we pull out what Harris calls the unscientific bits, it's true that we might lose more than we thought we were going to lose.
Right, as a society. And my feeling is that there's so much downside to the unscientific bits, and it's so clear how we could have a 21st century rational conversation about the good stuff that we really can radically edit these traditions.
So I would want to say that the good stuff, as he calls it, the inheritance that we've received from Christendom, he wants to be able to take all those treasures and take them over into a 21st century understanding and have an adult conversation about all of these things. I think if we had an adult conversation, we would find out that the end result of atheism is nihilism and despair, and it is a repository of nothing.
And we can take Jesus, in half his moods, and just find a great inspirational, Iron Age thought leader.
Let's quote him like Buddha, or quote him like Gandhi, or quote him like, we can quote Churchill or Jesus or Buddha or all these people. Inspirational, decontextualized thought that can fit on a Starbucks cup.
Who just happened to get crucified, but he could be someone like, the Beatitudes and the Golden Rule, which doesn't originate with him, but which, he put quite beautifully. All of that's incredibly useful. It's no less useful than it was 2,000 years ago.
Useful according to whom? By what standard? There is no God. Why should I do unto others as I would have them do unto me? Wouldn't it be better to have them think that I'm doing unto others as I would have them do unto me, while I'm actually in it for number one, so that they do unto me what they would like me to do unto them, but I'm running a con? Why wouldn't that be a good way to go?
But we don't have to believe he was born of a virgin or coming back to raise the dead or any of that other stuff. And we can be honest about not believing those things, and we can be honest about the reasons why we don't believe those things. Because I on those fronts, I view the downside to be so obvious And the fact that we have so many different competing dogmatisms on offer to be so non-functional, I mean, it's so divisive. It just has conflict built into it.
All those other opinions that differ with mine are divisive and contradictory. I know what, let's do things my way. Let me bring scientific materialism into the picture and have everyone bow down to that, whether or not you agree. Come on. His position, his worldview, is in the arena along with everything else. He can't pretend to be on this balcony overlooking the fray of worldviews and pretending to be above it all. I'm fond of saying that if there are 12 clowns in a circus ring cavorting about, you could get down there and start quoting Shakespeare, or Darwin in his case. But to the audience, you're just the 13th clown.
That I think we can be far more, and should be far more iconoclastic than he wants to be, right?
Yeah, but iconoclasm is a fun activity, and once you start, it's hard to know when to stop. Atheistic, materialistic scientism is an idol that does not know how to defend itself. An intelligent sophomore can take it apart in 5 minutes. Materialism collapses under its own weight. Watch in just a few minutes.
Now, none of this is to deny much of what he argues for, that stories are very powerful. Right? I mean, clearly stories are powerful, and we want good stories. We want our lives. We want to have a conversation with ourselves and with one another about our lives that facilitates the best possible lives. And
the best possible lives, according to whom? By what standard? There is no God. All we are is meat, bones, and protoplasm. All we are is a chance collection of atoms. We are a concatenation of atoms tumbling down an endless corridor with no meaning or purpose. Maybe we should tell one another stories on the way to give ourselves meaning.
Story is part of that, right? And if you want some of those stories to sound like myths, that might be part of it, right? But
sort of scratch and sniff meaning. There is no meaning. There is no God. The universe has no purpose. It has no design. It has no intelligence. And yet, we don't like that, so we want to tell one another stories.
My argument is that we never really need to deceive ourselves or our children about what we have every reason to believe is true in order to get at the good stuff.
Now, this is where I would agree with Harris, perhaps over against Peterson. In other words, I don't want to hang on to religion simply because it is pragmatically useful. You don't want to accept an account of ultimate reality simply because it helps keep a stable social order. Christians should want to pursue the truth, whatever the truth is, whatever ultimate truth is. That's what we should want to know. And that's what Harris is saying. But notice that Harris is saying truth above all things. But there is no truth. If his thoughts are simply the end result of what his brain chemicals would always do under those conditions and at that temperature, if his thoughts, the things he's saying right now, are simply the epiphenomena, simply the brain gas of what's coming out of his head, then we have no reason for believing his thoughts to have any validity at all. And that would include his thought that he has a brain, that he is a person, that he is making sense of in any way. In other words, this is a thing that collapses under its own weight. This is a worldview that cannot give an account of itself. Sam Harris saying, despite there being no God, I have meaning and I can know the truth about evolution, let's say, is if you shook up a bottle of pop and put it on the table here and it were fizzing over, his thoughts have the same mental authority that the bottle of pop does fizzing over. It's just a reaction. It's just something happening in the world. Truth? You don't look at the bottle of Mountain Dew I shook up and say, clearly a prophet. He speaks the truth.
In order to organize our lives well. I certainly don't feel that I need to do it personally. And if I don't need to do it personally, why would I think that billions of other people need to do it personally? Right now, there is a cynical counter-argument, which is billions of other people don't have the advantages that I have had in my life. The billions of other people are not as well educated. They haven't had the same opportunities. They need to be told that Jesus is going to solve all their problems after they die, say, or that everything happens for a reason, and if you just believe in the secret, if you just visualize what you want, you're going to get it. And it's like.
But notice, these people need to believe that everything happens for a reason. Harris believes that nothing happens for a reason. Nothing happens for a reason. And yet, he wants us to be able to act as though we have a reason for being. Now, I ask you, is that reasonable? All right, there are people who say, I need a foundation for believing that I have meaning. He says, no, there is no foundation. There is no meaning. And here's what you can do to create meaning for yourself. That's meaningless.
There's some measure of what I consider to be odious pablum that really is food for the better part of humanity, and there is no substitute for it, or there's no substitute now. And I don't know if Jordan would agree with that, but he much of what he says seems to suggest that he would agree with it. And I guess that's an empirical question. I mean, that's just that we don't know whether, given a different set of norms and a different set of stories, people would behave the way I would hope they would behave and be aligned, more aligned than they are now.
Stop there. What he considers to be odious pablum, it's true that when I'm looking at Sam Harris's worldview, what he believes and how he's functioning strikes me as odious pablum also. But it's not false because it strikes me as odious. There are things that I used to consider odious that I've now come to accept. I used to think that certain things were odious and not the teaching of the Bible, and now I believe that they are the teaching of the Bible. So whether something rubs my fur the wrong way, whether something strikes me as odious, doesn't mean anything. But what I can say is that what Sam Harris is arguing for here is not odious pablum. It's self-contradictory pablum. You don't need to discuss things with the man who says, I'm saying A, but I'm not maintaining that A is true.
I think we know what happens when you just let ancient religious certainties go uncriticized. We know what that world's like. We've been struggling to get out of that world for a couple of hundred years, but we know what, having Europe riven by religious wars looks like, right?
Yeah, we know what having Europe riven by religious wars looks like. And yet, the wars of the 20th century, the scientific wars, the advanced civilization, the post-Darwinian wars of the 20th century, in Europe, put all of the wars of religion into the shade.
And we know what happens when those religions become kind of pseudo-religions, political religions, right? So this is where I'm sure Jordan and I would debate. He would say that Stalin was a symptom of atheism, and that's not at all. I mean, it's not my kind of atheism, right?
Right. It was consistent atheism, as opposed to Harris, who's being an inconsistent atheist. If I may dare say so, Harris is a Christian atheist. Stalin was an atheist. Stalin didn't believe there was a God, and he acted like there was no God. Harris believes there is no God and wants to act as though there is one. He doesn't believe there's any meaning, doesn't believe there's any purpose, but he wants to act as though there is meaning and there is purpose. That means, so Stalin, he's exactly right. Stalin is not the kind of atheist that he is. Stalin was a worse human being than Harris, and Harris is a better human being than Stalin. All right, so Stalin is a worse human being, and Harris is a better human being, but Stalin is a better logician than Harris is being right here.
Stalin, the problem with the Gulag and the experiment with communism or with Stalinism or with Nazism was not that there was so much scientific rigor and self-criticism and honesty and introspection and, judicious use of psychedelics. I mean, that was not the problem in Hitler's Germany.
Wait, judicious use of psychedelics? I just want to flag that.
Or in Stalin's Soviet Union. The problem was you have other ideas that capture a similar kind of mob-based dogmatic energy.
And why is that bad? Why is it bad? Why is it wrong to have mob-based energy like that? You see, by this date, 2021, Stalin was going to be dead anyhow. He was going to be dead in any case. So he did what he did. He killed all the people he killed in the Ukraine and in the camps. He did all those things, and those little bits of protoplasm are no more, and the bit of protoplasm that Stalin is no more. So why should Stalin, from this vantage point, care what Sam Harris thinks about what he was doing? It doesn't matter. According to Harris, there is no justice. According to Harris, Stalin got away with it. And, of course, Harris is going to be able to get away with being critical of Stalin, but then he's going to die too.
And, yes, that's the results of all of that are predictably murderous.
And why is it bad to be predictably murderous? See, this is another example of Harris being a Christian atheist as opposed to Stalin, who was an atheist.
Well, the question is, what is the source of the most viral and sticky stories that ultimately lead to a positive outcome? So communism was, having grown up in the Soviet Union, even still, having relatives in Russia, there's a stickiness to the nationalism and to the ideologies of communism that, religious or not, you could say it's religious fervor. I could just say it's viral. It's great. It's stories that are viral and sticky. I'm using the most horrible words, but the question is whether science and reason can generate viral, sticky stories that give meaning to people's lives.
No, they cannot. Science and reason, strictly considered as something that arises out of atoms banging around, science has no authority. Reason has no authority. Atoms banging around, they have no authority.
In your sense, as it does.
Well, whatever is true ultimately should be captivating.
Yeah, that's very true. That's true. Whatever's true ultimately should be captivating and holy and lovely. But whatever's true ultimately, if what Harris is saying is true ultimately, is the case, then Harris can't know it. I can't know it. Right? If ultimate truth is that there is no purpose, there is no mind, there is no reason, there is no relationship between the position and velocity of all these atoms and the thoughts that they might be thinking, there's no connection, then there's no way that any collection or subset of those atoms banging around can know what the ultimate truth is. So the ultimate truth for them would not be true or good or lovely.
Right. It's like what's more captivating than whatever is real, right?
I will say it again. What's more captivating than whatever's real? Well, that's only, see, he's being a Christian again. That's only the case if what is ultimately real is altogether lovely, altogether beautiful, altogether omnipotent, triune. But if ultimate reality is just the rubble of the Big Bang, if that's what it is, who cares?